On this week's Cosmic Cantina, I dig out a file of a UFO encounter during the Korean War that relates back to a recent article published by Popular Mechanics that dissects the U.S. government's study of anomalous phenomenon. Then, Josh and Matt go fisticuffs over if disclosure is really happening. I'm your host, Melissa Tittle, and every week I go to my favorite bar, Cosmic Cantina, and kick back with my co-hosts, Josh Golombeski and Matt O'Connor. We talk about aliens, Bigfoot, ghosts, ancient cultures, and anything from the unseen world that needs a little illumination. Welcome to Cosmic Cantina. I'm your host, Melissa Tittle, and tonight we are drinking Espolón tequila.
Very yummy.
Margaritas.
Yeah, gluten-free too for me, because, you know, I'm gluten-free. I bring it up every podcast.
For everyone.
It's fine, everyone
Wait,
gets to
you're
know.
gluten-free?
Yes, yeah.
Holy shit, dude, I didn't know.
You say that every podcast.
At least the last four.
Well, here's something we're going to revisit. I know that in previous podcasts we've talked about the Navy UFOs, or UAPs, sorry. It's a new term now.
Yes.
And I want to bring up a recent article published in Popular Mechanics, February 14th, 2020. It's called Inside the Pentagon's Secret UFO Program. This breaks down the Navy UAP incident in full detail. And we want to talk about that, but first I want to go back in time. I really want to talk about a UFO experience that happened in the Korean War.
Ooh,
and
okay.
You're probably asking why. The reason...
Why?
Thank you, Josh.
Sorry,
that was your cue.
Why?
You're late, Matt. You're late. I think that every generation has a UFO story. I know it's now called UAP, but everyone has one, and it's pretty significant, and then it kind of goes away, and there's this whole this government issue with it. So I wanted to bring up this story because I covered this story on History Channel several years ago on a show called Hangar One.
Okay.
And these are real documented stories, not only by the Air Force, but also in MUFON and some of these organizations that have full documentation from all the soldiers. So this included like 43 soldiers that got affected by this one experience.
Ooh, break it down.
All right. So here's the story. In May 1951, 1 year into the Korean War, PFC Francis P. Wall and his regiment found themselves stationed near Chowon, about 60 miles north of Seoul. As they were preparing to bombard a nearby village with artillery, all of a sudden, the soldiers saw a strange light up in the hills. Kind of like they explained like a jack-o'-lantern came wafting down from the mountain. So they're all thinking, like, what is that? Would you guys see that?
Yeah, it's not like an enemy weapon or something.
It was like floating?
So it was floating. It had these lights kind of swirling around it.
Okay.
So that's why I think they said it looked
Classic,
like a floating jack-o'-lantern.
Mm-hmm.
Then it started pulsing and kind of like flaring this light. And of course, they were watching this thing, and they were watching it as it was going through this battle. Like they went to this village. They started shooting. The actual battle was happening, and this thing was just going through like bullets. Like nothing was bothering it. It was just completely going through. Like
they were
all this
shooting
artillery.
at it and stuff.
Yeah. Well, at first, no one was shooting at it. They were just watching how it wasn't affected by what was happening. Like it just was floating through everything without any effect.
I love that scientific approach that it's like the American movie people, American soldiers just like, what is it? Just start shooting at it and see what happens.
Just shoot first, ask questions later.
Yeah, that's it. That's what happened next. They're like, oh, just shoot at it.
Yeah.
So they started shooting at it, and it got pissed.
Uh-oh.
It's then started to focus on where all the gunfire was coming, and it came close to them, and it started pulsing again. But this time, it shot out these kind of rays of light. This guy, Wall, remembers this pulse of light waving through his body. He remembers a burning, tingling sensation sweeping over his body.
Okay.
As if he was being penetrated. And then the men all rushed, to safety underground into a bunker. And then the thing just shot up 45-degree angle and left. However, 43 men were completely like sick, throwing up, dysentery, had really high levels of white blood cells as if they had come in contact with some kind of radiation.
These are the American soldiers. Obviously, the other side may have a story about this as well, but what we're talking about is the American soldiers who were affected by this
Right,
UFO
43
anomaly.
of them.
Okay.
So they all reported the same thing. They all got tested. So all the tests of their body fluids, how sick they were, their white blood cell count, all that is recorded.
And did they
verified. Okay.
Did they find radiation?
No, I think that they were saying this is the effects of people that have been close to radiation. They didn't test for radiation during this.
But they had all the symptoms of someone who went through radiation.
Yes, all the symptoms
Got
they
it.
have. So at first, they thought, okay, maybe it's the Soviet Union. Maybe the Soviet Union has some kind of German technology, some anti-gravity device, right? Except that after they had left and the Korean War was over, Korea reported seeing these same kind of jack-o'-lantern things afterwards. So why were they there if it was the Soviet Union, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So that was kind of debunked. So then this is during the time of Project Blue Book. So this went to Project Blue Book. They did a total investigation of
Oh, really?
this.
I didn't know that.
Yep.
That's cool.
Project Blue Book ended in 1969. Mm-hmm. And there the Air Force announced, look, we took all the stories, we documented everything, nothing's to be found. Nothing happened.
Do you want to do a brief, what is Project Blue Book in a nutshell?
Project Blue Book was a government-run organization that they were trying to see if UFOs were real. So they were taking civilian reports, but they were also taking war reports. They were actually taking reports from all over the world. In fact, I found one from like Papua New Guinea that they were like putting into the Project Blue Book file, like in 1951.
Wow. Okay.
So they were all over the world, not just, I think Project Blue Book, it is an American-run organization. However, they were all over. They were
Yeah, just in case anyone's wondering, it's an example that the government did spend money investigating UFOs. The purpose of that study basically was to debunk UFOs, but afterwards, Hynek himself did say that they could not explain like 5 to 10% of all the sightings they had in there. And a lot of the explanations he gave weren't necessarily the real thing that happened. He just gave them.
There was a lot of like swamp gas and all that sort of bullshit. It was
Right, kind of offended people in a sense. But afterwards, he came out and said it was all real. Anyways, I digress.
Yeah. So again, I'm bringing this up because we're going to come back to it. It is like another government-run organization. They make a big deal of it. All these reports get filed, and then nothing happens, right? So now you have this UAP Navy situation, right, in 2004. But this time we have Google. We have the internet. Like, people can see the videos.
Yeah.
So they have to do a lot more work to figure out what they're going to tell people. Because they can't just tell people it's a weather balloon, because people get to see the video for themselves.
Right. Yeah.
And then they had to verify, yes, we don't know what that is. It's a UAP.
Unidentified aerial phenomenon.
Thank you. I kind of like UFO, but that's okay.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, there's a reason they changed the name recently, too. Everyone's saying UAP instead of UFO. Because I think UFO has such a name of, like, silliness and nonsense, and people are able to say, there's no legitimacy to that name anymore.
But so it's the same thing, right?
It's the same exact thing.
It's the same thing, yeah. But
it changes brand name. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, like
the branding people came in and were like, we can't call it that anymore because it makes everyone smirk at the Pentagon. Let's go with UAP there, guy.
Ooh, I like that.
I don't know.
They had New England accents, too.
I don't know if that's like from, the Into the Stars Academy, since that's been such a big thing recently, whether they kind of really are pushing this different branding to bring some more legitimacy to UFOs. But
yeah, that's the first time I kind of heard about it. But then apparently Hillary Clinton said it on like a late night talk show, and she was like, "They don't call it UFOs anymore; they call it UAPs."
Like after the Navy situation,
no,
or before?
So it was the thing before, but then I think you're right that brought it out into the public.
Yeah, because I didn't know that. Yeah, but I guess I'm not cool. That wasn't in an article I read, so therefore I didn't have that information.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So one more thing about this story with the American soldiers in Korea.
Mm-hmm.
So previously on our podcast, we had a guy named Patrick Jackson. He's a reverse engineer, and he has been doing work for the last 15 years on trying to figure out what these spheres or little balls of light are. He doesn't think that they're UAPs or UFOs. He thinks that they're part of an AI system that's monitoring our Earth. And so you can go to his site, Quantum Paranormal. He has tons of videos. He has all of his research that he's done on it. And why I bring this up is that So they reported that they saw this jack-o'-lantern float down.
Yeah.
So it's very similar to what people report, the stuff that he's gathered, where it's just this kind of silver ball and it has a bunch of lights flaring off of it. But when you get close to it, it makes you sick. It literally makes you sick. I mean, he has tons of reports of people who get sick. It also can put images in your head. It can create some kind of fear. It gives off.
Yeah.
It does the same thing, the exact same thing that all of his reports today report, with causing this kind of ray of light and then causing all these issues.
Yeah, I was going to say it's a pretty classic report of people who've had close encounters. We went through the different close encounters. I forget which one it is where they just have an encounter where they see something, but it also has some sort of interaction. Was that third kind?
Third or fourth.
Third or fourth?
Yeah, there's like 9 now.
Yeah.
It's like chakras.
It just keeps going up. Yeah. Anyway, but that's pretty common, like, report of having an interaction with a UFO where, there's like this radioactive reaction all of a sudden where they get super sick and there's burns and, the people report their eyes, their retinas getting burnt and stuff. It's like they're looking at the sun sort of thing. There's all sorts of problems. But, yeah, it's pretty common factor in it.
Yeah. So I don't know. I just wanted to bring up that guy's research because it's really interesting, because he's trying to prove that there are aliens and there's ghosts and paranormal that happen, but most of the things that we experience is part of this AI Matrix program, which is a completely different concept. I just wanted to bring it up that the stories were similar, and just like Matt said, like, this stuff seems to be the same. It's the same kind of stuff that people report.
Yeah, I don't like the fear-based side of that, where it hurts you, but it makes sense because a lot of like classic UFO experiences, especially if you go down like what Dr. Greer says, are very positive, And there's a lot of people out there experiencing these negative events. And what is that? And maybe it could be this AI system that's out there. I think that's interesting. We always get into like a unified paranormal theory, and his whole theory could unite a lot of these experiences. I just don't like the fear side of it, because if it is real, that's cool, but I just want to make that separation that real encounters with extraterrestrials are usually positive and benign. There's a lot of reports of that as well, where they see something and they have an interaction and they have dreams and everything's very positive. So I just hate to go down the fear route of like this AI system like radiating you and making you scared for whatever reason. Because what's it doing? It dropped down to get DNA samples? Is that the whole point of the system?
Yeah,
it's like it's monitoring and stealing DNA?
Right. So he would say that if he was here and I said, hey, this sounds like similar to those fears, is that it was coming down to do DNA samples because there's probably a lot of dead bodies.
Interesting.
This is why they
I didn't see that. That's
they
cool.
show up a lot of cemeteries. They're also in the forest a lot, because it's like pure DNA.
Wow.
They really don't want to interact with people. They just want to come and select DNA.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. Well, this leads into the other article, the Popular Mechanics article. And I think I'll get to this in a second, but I think that is part of why they're not disclosing everything right out of the gates. Because if it was as simple as aliens from another planet, I think the information would already be out there. But I think it's a lot weirder and a lot more complex and a lot of other things going on. And it could be something like an AI system. How's the government going to come out and be like, hey, by the way, there's an ancient AI system operating
they would
in a
never
different
say
dimension.
that. We haven't been able to crack it, by the way. So
right. Yeah, so
we're complete
never mind
losers.
the aliens. They're not a problem. They're actually kind of friendly, but we got to deal with this shit, and we got to deal with other dimensions and these dark entities from here and these enlightened beings. Like
somebody in our cabinet is having astral sex.
Yeah.
We got to really contain this stuff.
Right. Well, I was going to do this rant later, but I think we're already in, so I'm going to do it quick. Dive in. So the end of this article, there's many things I want to break down in the article, but the end of it, to jump to the end, he says a line basically in the Popular Mechanics article that we're going to meet, like when disclosure happens, it's going to be met with a shrug. Which I think is good. And here's why.
Oh, really?
I think it's smart. If you were in a position of power and there was this, because for all this time people were just like, oh, it's just aliens. Just let everyone know it's aliens. Everyone's going to be fine with aliens. Like, I'm fine with aliens. Everyone's fine with aliens, right? But if it's a lot weirder than that, you have to slowly condition people. And I think if I was in a position of power and I was responsible for the human masses, I think I would probably be like, okay, guys, we can't just come out of the gates and be like, there's an ancient AI system. There's aliens from other planets. There's demons from other dimensions. There's higher enlightened beings who are visiting people. Dead people are real. Like, there's so much out there that's so crazy that most people are just dealing with, there's a spacecraft from another planet? Like, that's just one thing happening. So I wonder, like, this is also fear in the Pentagon, like, which is crazy. It gets deep of like why they're disclosing it slowly. One of the problems is they keep hearing information from the Pentagon that there's actually high-level military officials who are just really religious and think it's all demonic, so they don't want it out there.
What? Really?
So it's just like ignorance.
Yeah, that was
It's nothing dark or like crazy.
Was it the Majestic 12? Was that? I think
No.
it was something else where they did that. There was a group study where they tried to, like, it was like a government-funded study where they tried to, break break. It was like Blue Book, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where they tried to dive into a bunch of these things, and that was what one of their determinations was. But it was like demons, like
Must
they
be
were
demons.
again. They were super religious, a religious
Right.
group. Of
So
the-
wait,
of the
they
government.
put everything in one category.